Ever get the feeling there's more to the story than what you see on the news? This list is all about the secrets, scandals, and real-life conspiracies hiding in plain sight. From bizarre government programs to unsettling facts about privacy, I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 shocking truths the government doesn't want you to know. 25. Some countries can unplug the internet like it's a toaster. Imagine waking up and finding all web and phone signals gone, as if someone flipped a giant switch. It happens more than you'd think. In several countries, think Iran, India, China, and others, the government legally cuts off the net to control dissent. They might claim protecting national security or stopping rumors, but in practice, it silences critics, protesters, and even journalists. Last year alone, activists documented nearly 300 government-ordered shutdowns across 50-plus countries. Billions of people find themselves suddenly offline, with businesses losing revenue and emergency services unable to coordinate. When that switch is flipped, people scramble to find satellite phones or VPNs just to send an "I'm alive" text. Meanwhile, censorship filters close in and state propaganda spreads even faster by word of mouth. These shutdowns are so controversial that the United Nations now calls internet access a human right. A 2021 UN Human Rights Council resolution declared that everyone has the right to the internet, explicitly condemning these blackouts. India's Supreme Court even ruled that cutting off the internet violates fundamental rights. Still, the power to pull the plug isn't confined to authoritarian regimes. In the US, a dusty law from 1934, Section 706 of the Communications Act, theoretically lets the president shut down communications in an emergency. In 2020, lawmakers introduced the Unplug the Internet Kill Switch Act to repeal that authority, but it didn't pass. For now, the web remains on for most of the time, but every blackout is a reminder of how fragile that can be. Don't take your Wi-Fi for granted, because somewhere in the world, a dictator is itching to hit that off switch at a moment's notice. 24. The United States recruited Nazi scientists to win the space race. Think science fair gone wrong. After World War II, the US quietly flew more than 1,500 former Nazi engineers and scientists into America under a secret program called Project Paperclip. These weren't mild-mannered professors. Many were high-ranking Nazis who built Hitler's V-2 rockets using slave labor. But in the dawn of the Cold War, their expertise was seen as too valuable to pass up. So military and political leaders gave them new identities, security clearances, and even citizenship as long as they agreed to work for the US government. One famous face is Wernher von Braun. Yes, the rocket genius behind Disney's model of a lunar colony and the Saturn V rocket that took us to the moon. He had been an SS officer in Nazi Germany, yet by the 60s he was leading NASA's rocket program. It gets weirder. To disguise the deal, CIA file clerks literally stapled paperclips to the files of picked scientists, marking them "Do Not Examine." Basically a "don't ask questions, this guy's on our team" tag. In other words, if you saw a dossier on Nazi scientists with a paperclip on top, that was the signal to go easy on him. Journalists later called it a blatant cover-up. Today's history textbooks seldom mention this hairpin turn, but it reminds us how Cold War desperation clashed with morality. America got its rockets, and eventually our flag on the moon, but the scandal left a stain. It's like recruiting a bad guy from a spy movie to work in your hero's lab. I mean, you win the arms race, but at what cost to your conscience? 23. War has become a profit center for defense firms. Ask yourself this: who gets richer every time a conflict drags on? Companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Halliburton see revenues soar when hostilities extend over months or years. Under cost-plus contracts, contractors bill for materials, labor, and unexpected costs, meaning the longer the war, the fatter their bottom line. With minimal oversight and powerful lobbying, these firms secure renewal after renewal, even if the battlefield gains little ground. Meanwhile, critics lament that profit motives can influence policy decisions as much as strategic interests. That big bill that Trump just signed into law on July 4th, the Big Beautiful Bill, The Nation magazine has called it one of the ugliest pieces of legislation to come out of Congress in living memory. It cuts $1.7 trillion, mostly in domestic spending in healthcare and environmental programs, while providing the top 5% of taxpayers with roughly $1.5 trillion in tax breaks. Over the next few years, that same bill will add another $150 billion to a Pentagon budget already approaching a record $1 trillion. In the battle between welfare and warfare, the military-based companies winning are carrying the day. For example, Trump wants to put $170 billion into a version of Israel's Iron Dome customized for the US called a Golden Dome. Laura Grego with the Union of Concerned Scientists said, although the US had already spent $350 billion over 60 years on missile defense, quote, "This effort has been plagued by false starts and failures, and none have yet been demonstrated to be effective against a real-world threat. Missile defenses are not a useful or long-term strategy for keeping the US safe from nuclear weapons." According to the nation's later analysis, the bill also includes billions more for shipbuilding, heavy new investments in artillery and ammunition, and funding for next-generation combat aircraft like the F-47. And at the bottom of that list is a line item for improving the quality of life for actual soldiers, which is less than 6% of the $150 billion that Congress is now poised to add to the defense budget. All for the troops, right? Well, not exactly. Much of the funding in the bill will flow into the districts of key members of Congress. For example, the Golden Dome project will send billions of dollars to companies based in Huntsville, Alabama, which calls itself Rocket City because of the dense network of missile companies there. And that helps Alabama Republican Mike Rogers, the current chair of the House Armed Services Committee. The shipbuilding funds will help arms makers like Hill Corporation, which runs a shipyard in Mississippi, the home state of Senate Armed Services Committee Chair Republican Roger Wicker of Mississippi. Those funds will benefit the co-chairs of the House Shipbuilding Caucus, Democratic Representative Joe Courtney of Connecticut, and Republican Representative Rob Whitman of Virginia. Connecticut hosts General Dynamics Electric Boat Plant, which makes submarines that carry ballistic missiles, while Virginia is home to Hill Corporation's Newport News shipbuilding facility, which makes both aircraft carriers and attack submarines. The Golden Dome missile defense project, on which Trump has promised to spend $175 billion over the next 3 years, will benefit contractors big and small. Those include companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon, now RTX, that build current generation missile defense systems, as well as emerging military tech firms like Elon Musk's SpaceX and Palmer Luckey's Anduril, both of which are rumored to have a shot at playing a leading role in the development of the new anti-missile system. So maybe it's time to ask, who really benefits from perpetual war? And is it worth that price in dollars and human lives? 22. The US military footprint dwarfs any empire in history. The US spends more on overseas military bases than any nation ever, while cutting funds from school funding and healthcare. Imagine a map covered with little American flags. From Germany's forests to Okinawa's beaches and the deserts of Kuwait to the jungles of Korea, the US has over 750 military bases and outposts in more than 80 countries. That's about 3 times more than the rest of the world combined, and it costs US taxpayers roughly $80 billion every year just to keep the lights on. In 2024 alone, the US spent $997 billion on the military, nearly 40% of all global defense spending. These bases aren't just flagpoles. They come with fleets of fighter jets, tanks, spy satellites, drones, and rotating deployments of US Marines. But there's a darker side. Local communities often pay the hidden cost with polluted groundwater, relentless noise, cultural friction, and chemical contamination. More than 700 US military sites have documented PFAS, forever chemical pollution. On the home front, the price tag is enormous. In 2024, the US spent $881 billion paying just the interest on the national debt. $31 billion more than was spent on schools and housing combined. Even agencies like ICE have been militarized with huge new budgets. The latest immigration bill poured $69 billion into more walls, drones, and armed agents, more than any social program. Critics say closing overseas bases could save billions a year that might go to healthcare or clean energy. Instead, local districts get their pockets lined with submarine contracts in Connecticut or rocket money in Alabama. It all adds up to a military empire that drains resources at home while maintaining the largest footprint in human history. Next time someone says defense spending is sacrosanct, remember, a chunk of your paycheck helps keep this global fortress alive. 21. Veterans were poisoned by toxic burn pits for years. Serving your country shouldn't mean risking your lungs and future, but for troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, open-air burn pits spewed a toxic fog over entire bases. These pits burned everything from plastics and batteries to medical waste and even human remains, doused in jet fuel and set ablaze 24/7. For a decade in the 2000s, soldiers and local villagers inhaled a cloud of carcinogens, heavy metals, and dioxins. When veterans came home with rare cancers, neurological disorders, and chronic lung disease, the Pentagon dismissed their complaints as allergies or blamed sandstorms. Families refused to let it go. After relentless advocacy, Congress passed the PACT Act in 2022-23, which guarantees free care for anyone exposed to burn pits in Iraq or Afghanistan, automatically covering specific cancers and lung conditions. President Biden called it the biggest expansion of benefits for toxic exposed veterans in over 30 years. But the story is still sobering. One doctor described the pits as poison camps, a legacy of modern warfare that'll haunt military health for decades. It's a powerful warning. When the government tells you a practice is routine, just remember the burn pits and question what's being swept under the rug. 20. The FDA-approved drugs later proven deadly. Trust in the FDA is supposed to keep us safe, but a long list of recalled drugs shows the system is far from perfect. Painkiller Vioxx was prescribed to millions and only later linked to more than 20,000 heart attack deaths. Diet combo Fen-Phen led to heart and lung failure in thousands before it was pulled. Resolin for diabetes was yanked after dozens died from liver failure. Baycol for cholesterol caused fatal muscle breakdown. Even thalidomide, infamous for birth defects worldwide, got narrow reapproval in the US decades later. The problem? Companies often hid negative trial results to get a fast track, and regulators sometimes looked the other way under pressure to innovate. Only after massive recalls and lawsuits did the truth emerge. The FDA's system has let deadly products slip through, and when it comes to medicine, speed can kill. Today, advocates demand more transparency, real-time safety monitoring, and full public access to data. The lesson is clear. A new drug is not a guarantee, and patients are sometimes the last to know the risks. 19. Forever chemicals were a forever kept secret. PFAS, those non-stick waterproof miracle chemicals, are in everything from Teflon pans to raincoats and pizza boxes. The industry knew since the 70s these chemicals don't break down, build up in blood, and cause cancer, birth defects, and hormone damage. For decades, the secret stayed hidden. Now, PFAS are everywhere. In fish, tap water, the blood of almost every American, and even in rain in remote wilderness. In April 2024, the EPA finally set strict national limits for PFAS in drinking water, measured in parts per trillion, so minuscule it's like one drop of ink in 2,000 Olympic pools. Upgrading all water plants to meet these limits will cost billions every year. The military is also responsible. Over 700 UF bases are known PFAS contamination sites due to firefighting foam and Teflon runoff, some now labeled Superfund sites. Scientists are still struggling to destroy PFAS, not just filter them, and lawsuits are piling up. The takeaway? Be skeptical of miracle products, and remember some corporate secrets last for generations. 18. Billionaires bend tax rules so you pay more. Ever wonder why Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk pays little to no federal income tax while most workers see 15 to 30% gone from their every paycheck? The answer is a giant legal shell game. The average US worker would have to earn for over 20,000 years to make $1 billion. To match Bezos' current fortune, you would need to work 2.8 million years. The super rich don't take big salaries. Instead, they borrow against their stocks, no tax owed, hide fortunes in trusts, and pay capital gains rates far below ordinary income tax. ProPublica found America's top billionaires paid a true tax rate under 4% over recent years, sometimes zero. The result? Us working people carry a greater share of the public budget, and lawmakers calling for a wealth tax or a billionaire minimum tax have faced powerful industry pushback. The system is rigged by lobbyists, and the double standard is no accident. For billionaires, the code is full of custom loopholes. For everyone else, it's just a bill in the mail. 17. Defense contractors charge obscene prices for plain gear. Think government waste is just a joke? The Pentagon once paid $644 each for coffee pots, $1,200 for a toilet seat, and $3,000 for a wrench. This isn't just old news. CBS's 60 Minutes revealed in 2023 that parts costing $3.50 were sold to the Air Force for $28 million, a markup of more than 1,000,000%. The reason? Cost-plus contracts pay companies their costs plus guaranteed profit, so there's no incentive to save. Boeing, TransDigm, and others regularly mark up simple parts by hundreds of percent. And with thousands of Pentagon procurement staff laid off since the 90s, there's nobody left to audit every bill. Negotiators like Shay Assad say the system is broken, but the DoD has now failed its audit 7 years in a row, with over $4 trillion in assets scattered across 4,500 sites. Taxpayers foot the bill while contractors get richer, and soldiers and families see the real costs in underfunded gear and pay. If a coffee pot costs more than a PlayStation, imagine what the big-ticket weapons cost. 16. Your smartphone secretly sells all its data to the feds. Every time you use your phone, you're producing a stream of data. GPS locations, web searches, even what you say to Alexa or Siri. Tech companies and data brokers turn this information into profiles which they sell to advertisers, and yes, to law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Agencies buy your location data from companies like Ventel and Babel Street without a warrant. The Fourth Amendment was never built for this world. A report by the Electronic Frontier Foundation exposed ICE, FBI, and even the Secret Service quietly buying Americans' location histories to track movements, visits to protests, or trips to certain businesses. Insurance companies and lenders use this same data to set your rates or deny loans, all without you knowing. Until laws change, your phone is a pocket-sized informant, and every free app is a trade for another piece of your life. 15. The post office snaps photos of every letter you mail. Old-fashioned mail isn't as private as you think. The USPS runs mail isolation control and tracking, which photographs every envelope, postcard, and package, front and back, before it gets delivered. These images are stored for up to 30 days and can be searched by police or federal agents without warrant. After the anthrax attacks in 2001, the government claimed it was a security tool, but today it's a silent surveillance net. Cybersecurity expert Bruce Schneider compared it to the government having a near-perfect map of your social network just from mail. Courts have called this database a treasure trove for law enforcement, and there is little oversight. Journalists were outraged in 2013 when the FBI posed as Associated Press to hack a suspect, blurring the line between the press and law enforcement. Local cops and private investigators can sometimes get access too. The scary part? There's no requirement to delete these images quickly. Your Valentine, your legal papers, and your bills are all part of a vast digital archive you never knew existed. 14. License plate readers turn your car into a snitch. Modern automatic license plate readers scan 1,800 license plates a minute, noting time and coordinates and storing them in a searchable database. Police, parking garages, shopping centers, and even private bail bondsmen use this data to track movements, sometimes for years. Some vendors claim their databases can predict where you'll drive next. ACLU reports reveal these scans are rarely deleted, and most hits are on law-abiding people. Insurance companies can buy the data and set your rates based on where you've been. Landlords and advertisers use it too. In some cities, police store every scan forever. If you think highway freedom is safe, think again. Everywhere your car goes is logged and can be used by anyone who pays. 13. You're watched without a warrant more than you think. Post 9/11 laws gave government agencies enormous powers to collect phone records, internet traffic, and app usage with minimal judicial review. The third-party doctrine says law enforcement can grab any data you've given to companies, Google, AT&T, Facebook, your favorite app, no warrant required. Police use stingrays to sweep up phone signals at protests, and national security letters come with gag orders so nobody knows what's been shared. Smart speakers, fitness trackers, and even grocery apps store data on corporate servers. All can be subpoenaed, often without your knowledge. Predictive algorithms now crunch this data to map out likely criminals or calculate credit scores, blurring the line between public and private. The modern dragnet means most Americans are under constant surveillance. 12. Secret watch lists can ruin lives with no charges. You can be placed on the US government's no-fly list, terrorist screening database, or dozens of other secret lists without ever being arrested or charged. In 2019, over 1.1 million names were in the main terror database, almost none US citizens. Mistakes happen all the time. Kids and seniors end up flagged just because their names resemble a person of interest. There's almost no way to get you off. You usually find out only after being detained at the airport or denied entry into a building. There's no notice, no hearing, and no timeline for appeal. Civil liberties groups say this upends the principle of innocent until proven guilty. Many of who are listed are stuck in bureaucratic limbo for years, with their daily life disrupted and few legal rights retained. 11. A handful of media giants control most of what you read and watch. It feels like there are a million news sources, but nearly everything you see comes from just 6 corporations: Comcast, Disney, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Fox, and a couple more. These companies own the TV networks, radio stations, movie studios, newspapers, streaming platforms, and even many online outlets. They control the stories you hear, the shows you binge, and the voices that shape the public debate. Local newspapers are vanishing. News deserts now exist across entire cities, replaced by syndicated content controlled by a handful of boardrooms. Stories that threaten corporate partners or major advertisers often get buried. Scholars like Noam Chomsky and Edward Herman call this manufacturing consent, where the illusion of free choice masks the reality that a handful of executives set the agenda for millions. The next time you scroll the headlines, ask yourself, whose interests are being served? Look at the censorship we have to do here on YouTube, or else they'll pull our videos. Unalive yourself. Grape. 10. The CIA hatched a coup that still haunts US-Iran relations. In 1953, the CIA, and Britain's MI6, overthrew Iran's elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, because he nationalized oil. Operation Ajax used bribes, street gangs, and propaganda to turn the army and public against Mossadegh, installing the Shah and creating 2 decades of autocracy. The Shah's secret police, Savak, were infamous for torture. The 1979 Islamic Revolution and the storming of the US Embassy traced directly back to that coup. Declassified documents show the plot, and even the CIA now admits its role. This is why every nuclear crisis or diplomatic standoff with Iran has decades of mistrust beneath it. It's not ancient history. It's why relations are so fraught. 9. Commercial software sometimes has hidden backdoors for spies. Some updates for your favorite gadgets are more than bug fixes. They may carry hidden backdoors for spies. In 2015, Juniper admitted its network routers had a secret master password and comprised encryption algorithm which allowed hackers or governments to spy on supposedly secure traffic. Experts believe the NSA demanded some of these weaknesses. Criminals or hostile states have learned to hijack these same backdoors for their own attacks. Wired magazine warns that every government-ordered vulnerability becomes a threat to everyone's security. Trust, but verify, and never assume that a security update has your best interests in mind. 8. The internet was born from military paranoia in the Cold War. The internet's DNA is pure military paranoia. In 1969, the Pentagon's DARPA built ARPANET, linking 4 universities with a network designed to survive a nuclear war. Packet switching was invented so messages could reroute around and destroy nodes. By 1973, ARPANET spanned continents. By 1983, it split into a civilian internet and military milnet, but the underlying technology spread to universities, companies, and now your phone. Senator Al Gore's 1991 High Performance Computing Act, Gore Bill, poured $600 million into the backbone of what became today's web. Gore coined the information superhighway and pushed for nationwide access, helping bring the internet into every school and home. Every meme, email, and video call today rides on a system built to outwit the Soviets and fund national research. Proof that military tech sometimes ends up changing the world. 7. Secret government bunkers are scattered under US soil. Cold War nightmares left a legacy you never see. Massive bunkers deep underground, ready for doomsday. Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado sits under 2,000 feet of rock on giant shock-absorbing springs. It can survive a nuclear blast and runs NORAD's command center. Raven Rock Mountain Complex in Pennsylvania is the underground Pentagon, and Mount Weather in Virginia is set up as a backup White House and Congress, stocked with food, water, and living quarters. Some details are public, but most of the network is classified. Rumors swirl about hidden bunkers in Kansas or California, their entrances disguised and guarded by timers. One RPG offered some nods to these layers. Bethesda's Morrowind and Skyrim both had expansions that included the Snowy Island with a fortress named Raven Rock in tribute. When disaster strikes, these sites are ready to house the elite and run the country. For the rest of us, it's just a reminder that the government plans for the unimaginable, quietly out of sight. 6. The FBI has a long history of spying on political and religious groups. From the 1950s through the 70s, the FBI's COINTELPRO infiltrated civil rights groups, anti-war protesters, and even faith communities. They wiretapped Martin Luther King Jr., spread rumors to sabotage meetings, and used informants to disrupt organizations seen as subversive. The 1976 Church Committee revealed the abuses and promised reform. But the tactics never fully disappear. Since 1979, FBI surveillance has expanded into Muslim communities, environmentalists, and activists across the spectrum. Deep cover training materials reveal agents can still infiltrate organizations with little oversight. Chillingly, it's now easier than ever to spy on almost anyone. The line between security and targeting dissent is thin and always moving. 5. Emergency powers often become permanent executive tools. Congress passed the National Emergency Act in 1976 to check presidential power. But since then, presidents have declared over 70 national emergencies, most never really ending. The Cuban embargo, based on a 1962 emergency, is renewed every year. The hostage crisis emergency on Iran from 1979 is still in place, used to freeze assets or ban travel. More recently, emergencies cover everything from narco-trafficking to election interference. Each declaration gives the White House sweeping powers with almost no congressional input. Civil liberties advocates say these were meant to be temporary, but have become a shadow legal system, allowing presidents to sidestep Congress. Reformers want automatic expiration and stricter oversight, but so far, inertia rules. Emergency rule is now just another tool in the executive arsenal. 4. The FBI once pretended to be journalists to catch suspects. Undercover tricks can cross a line, and in 2007 the FBI did just that. Agents posed as Associated Press reporters, sending a suspect a fake news link that installed spyware and tracked his keystrokes. When this came out, real journalists were outraged. If law enforcement can pose as reporters, every whistleblower and source is put at risk. The Justice Department tightened guidelines after outcry, but loopholes remain. FOIA requests show agents have posed as film crews, rented camera vans, and even embedded in community groups to gather intelligence. This tactic undermines trust in real media and risks innocent people being duped by a badge in disguise. 3. The US has invaded or intervened in more countries than you suspect. Official history books cover Iraq and Afghanistan, but the covert list is much longer. CIA-backed coups in Iran and Guatemala in the 50s, invasions of Panama, Grenada, and proxy wars in Nicaragua in the 80s, and Operation Condor in South America. The US funded anti-communist rebels, bankrolled dictators, and helped orchestrate coups in Chile, toppling Allende in 1973, and many more. Journalist Stephen Kinzer has shown that short-term successes often breed decades of resentment, chaos, and blowback. Countries caught in the crossfire still remember, even if Americans don't. The bottom line? US foreign policy is littered with secret interventions, and the true cost is still being paid. 2. Foreign governments pour money into US think tanks. On paper, think tanks are independent research centers. But in reality, many accept millions from foreign governments and even intelligence agencies. Qatar, China, Saudi Arabia, and others have donated to Brookings, the Atlantic Council, Heritage Foundation, and RAND. These donors get private briefings, reports that support their interests, and public panels with friendly experts. The New York Times revealed Qatar Bank funneled money to major Washington think tanks, which then hosted events and published studies favorable to Qatari policies. Heritage Foundation received a $2.2 million donation from South Korea's KCIA in the 80s, later shifting its Korea policy. Transparency is thin. Millions can flow through education funds or vague government support lines, never registering as foreign lobbying. The result? American policy debates sometimes echo the priorities of foreign donors, shaping decisions long before Congress votes or the news covers the issue. 1. MKULTRA's electroshock experiments. The CIA's darkest secret was MKUltra, a 1950s and 60s program to probe mind control. Funded by the CIA and run at dozens of universities and hospitals, it included LSD tests on unwitting patients, sensory deprivation, and brutal electroshock therapy that went far beyond medical norms. Some subjects, including vulnerable addicts and mental patients, were lied to, strapped down, and blasted with electricity until they lost memory and basic cognitive skills. At least one death, Dr. Frank Olson, is documented. Senate hearings in the 70s revealed only a fraction of the horror. Most files were destroyed. But the chilling idea, breaking people through trauma to reshape their minds, never fully died. Author Naomi Klein's shock doctrine draws the parallel. Societies, like individuals, can be shocked by disaster or crisis, making them easier to control. After 9/11, surveillance laws expanded while the country reeled. After COVID, massive stimulus packages slipped through with corporate giveaways. The lesson? Real shock therapy isn't just in the lab, but in public policy, using crisis as cover for drastic and unpopular change. Alright, trivia time. Which US think tank received a $2.2 million donation from a foreign intelligence agency in the 80s? Bonus points if you name the agency too. I'm also going to make this one a little bit harder. No multiple choice. Good luck. Now, we've peeled back the layers on smokescreens and hidden agendas, showing how power operates behind closed doors. From secret CIA experiments to top secret bunkers, these are the stories the headlines won't tell. Until now. Stay curious and keep digging for the facts, because truth is the best defense against deception. Thanks for sticking around, and if you like this deep dive, hit subscribe, notification bell, social medias, do all that stuff. Tell me in the comments what blew your mind. I'll catch you guys later.